From blueprints to booming businesses, from groundbreaking to grand openings, this is Beyond the Blueprint. Join host Brad Howard as he takes you behind the scenes of growth and development in Mooresville, Lake Norman, and beyond. We're talking with the decision makers, the planners, the visionaries shaping our communities, giving exclusive insight into what happens before, during, and after projects that define our region. The future is being built right now. Let's go beyond the blueprint.
Good Friday afternoon. Welcome to Beyond the Blueprint on WSIC. I'm your host, Brad Howard. And thank you to those listening on the radio, tuning in on 105.9 FM, 100.7 FM, 1400 AM, or if you're watching on social media or at WSICnews.com or on the WSIC News app. I want to start today with a few numbers. The first, 200 million. That's Alexander Farms, the largest mixed-use development ever planned in the town of Cornelius. 54 acres at the corner of Westmoreland and West Catawba. $80 million. That's the Mills Market project. 239-unit project rising up right now in the downtown Arts District on Catawba Avenue, adjacent to Kane Center for the Arts. $122 million. That's the dollar value of the 8 projects underway or about to break ground inside the Cornelius town limits. And 600. That's roughly the number of petition signatures gathered in opposition to a proposed $20 million hotel at Mays and Samfur Roads that came before the town board earlier this month. That's the volume, the velocity, and the controversy of what it means to be a planner in the fastest growing micromarket on the western shoreline of Lake Norman. The man we have in the studio today sits at the center of those conversations. He's Assistant Planning Director for the town of Cornelius, hired in December of 2024. Before that, he spent years as a planner just up the road in the town of Mooresville, which means he's run the development counter on both sides of the Iredell and the Mecklenburg County line. He is AICP credentialed. David is one of the people shaping how the corridor actually gets built. So David Cole, welcome.
Happy to be here, Brad.
All right. So David, before we get into rezonings, roundabouts, and rooftops, I wanted our listeners to know the person running point on planning in Cornelius. You hold AICP credential, the American Institute of Certified Planners. And for listeners who don't live in this world, that's not a degree you frame or hang on the wall. It's a national certification that says a planner has passed a rigorous exam on land use, ethics, transportation, and the law. So what I want you to do is take us back to the start, take us back to the beginning. What pulled you into city and town planning as a career in lieu of architecture, real estate, engineering? Why this path?
That's a fantastic question. Oftentimes fascination in some of those other fields that you mentioned, so architecture, engineering, just kind of your appreciating your built environment, right? That's often what pulls you into the field of planning and urban design, right?
Right.
I liked to explore my hometown when I was a kid. I liked to ride my bike around. I grew up in a northeastern town where, we had a pretty walkable environment. I could ride my bike downtown. There were plenty of trails and parks I could get to kind of by myself as a kid, right? Had a lot of friends in the neighborhood. And so kind of that upbringing, being in a place like that as a kid often leads you to kind of experience your place, your town in a different way than if you may be raised somewhere else where, you're less mobile.
Right.
And so, in the Northeast, we had a lot of really historic architecture, beautiful homes, old buildings, just a fascinating place. And so that's, kind of what led to my fascination in those areas. Initially, I wanted to be an architect.
Okay.
I also am not a math guy. And so you kind of figure out pretty quick, like, okay, maybe there's another way I can, another approach to the career.
Right.
And I think another moment for me was when I was in college, a group of us, we went to Chicago for a little bit, major city. And it's kind of another one of those experiences when you get to be in a really cool place on foot, right? And that's riding the transit network and kind of getting to see a new place like that reinvigorated my fascination with the built environment. What makes it great and how can it be improved? That kind of led my area of study. I got my master's of public administration from UNC Charlotte. And from there, just kind of pursued a career in local government, because planning does touch all those areas, right? And it's one of those really important fields in understanding how a town functions, just in general. So I'm grateful for my career and the communities that I've gotten to work in, and including Cornelius. And we have a great team. I work under Rox Burhans. He's our planning director, and closely with other planners like Aaron Tucker, very knowledgeable about the community, and just want to see it grow in the right way.
I like that outlook.
Yep.
Also, I went to UNC Charlotte too.
Oh, fantastic!
So, a few years before you. But no. So the next question is: you spent years as a planner in the town of Mooresville, a senior planner in the town of Mooresville.
That's right.
Then in about December of 24, you took the role here in Cornelius.
That's correct.
So, so what was the conversation that brought you across the county line?
Yeah, I think there are two very different planning philosophies between those communities. And I think what was really appealing about Cornelius, it is and I can touch more on this later. It kind of sits at the intersection of the Lake Norman area. So when you think about it, we're almost building out as a community.
Right.
So you've got Lake Norman to the west, you've got Davidson, Huntersville on all other sides.
Right.
And in early conversations with the Cornelius group, it's really important to understand, the decisions that you make in Cornelius are very important. Every land use, every planning decision is reviewed very carefully and with a very focused lens on the benefit to the community.
Right.
And that's sort of a culture in a planning department. I was very appealing to me. So I wanted to go to a place where we could really spend a lot of time on each project. And we have a very supportive board and a very supportive administration to get those things right, to get the planning questions answered in the right way. So just overall, the culture there is fantastic, and it's great to be in a place like that. So
yeah. So anything genuinely different that stand out between the two? In Mooresville, it was inside of a town. It was the fastest growing town in the entire Charlotte metro.
That's right.
But in Cornelius, you're in a town that's essentially built out like we talked about, except for some raw acreage, and everything else is redevelopment. So
that's right.
Other things different. I mean, I know we could talk to this. I'm not going to put you on the spot with this, but different politics, different control, different counties. Just
very much so.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So what exactly, I guess, drilling down just so people understand what the role is. What is your typical Tuesday like?
Yeah.
I mean, just
no day in a planning department is the same.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of balance, especially in my position. We spend probably about half our day in some sort of a land development sort of capacity. So usually that's answering emails or speaking with developers that have ongoing projects in the community. There's a little bit of plan review involved. So we coordinate a lot with both the development community, their consultants, to make sure that their plans comply with town ordinances. We also answer a lot of inquiries and requests for development, as well as coordinating with our county staff. So there's a lot of that. There's some general customer service. And a lot of my days right now are focused on more of the long-range planning for our downtown and our bicycle pedestrian network.
Right. So we're gonna take a break here in a second, but when we come back, so we're gonna answer one question: is from a citizen's perspective, they typically don't call the planning department unless there's an issue, right? So
right.
Just when we come back, just get your topic on what people usually call about, just to understand what you deal with every day.
Absolutely.
So Brad Howard with David Cole, Town of Cornelius. We'll be right back. And we're back. Beyond the Blueprint with David Cole with the Town of Cornelius, talking about planning. We left it before the break and just wanted to know interesting things that, from the public's perspective, when they have a problem is when the public typically calls the planning department. From a developer standpoint, it's when you have a project. But walk us through some of the typical complaints or issues or concerns that you may receive.
Yeah, there's a long range or a wide range of things that we hear from the public. And I will say, Cornelius, we're a very plugged in community.
Yes.
I think a lot of residents feel very comfortable calling their local government about lots of things, which we do encourage as public officials. Probably first and foremost, what we hear a lot about is code enforcement related.
Right.
So we get, we have some ordinances around things like junk in yards, old vehicles, tall grass, things like that. So one of my roles is I help manage the code enforcement process.
Okay.
And so we generally get calls about that, probably the biggest volume, right? So people reporting, honestly, other properties. And also we get a lot of miscellaneous questions about things like signage or fencing, sort of things that people observe out in their environment. And then if it's an ordinance violation, we go out there and we address it. So there's definitely, that's the highest volume of things that we hear from folks. And then, like you mentioned, the development community is always asking about property that's for sale. Right. We can always tell when a property is listed because everyone...
You get a lot of phone calls.
Right. So like everyone, especially in Cornelius, where again, land is more and more scarce.
Right.
It'll be 3 of us might get a call on a property in the same day and realize, okay, we got to compare notes and make sure the answer is the same.
Make sure the same narrative is going out.
Exactly. So we do get a lot of that as well, depending on what's listed at the time.
Right.
So,
all right. So this half of this quarter of the segment, let's dig into the projects that are actually happening now. What's getting built in Cornelius? So starting with the headlines. So just we're going to run through them and then we'll get into a little more detail. The Alexander Farms is roughly 54 acres at Westmoreland in West Catawba. It's about $200 million in tax base, 70 active adult cottages that are already built and nearly fully leased. It's River Rock Village. There's 142 apartment homes coming in the summer of 27. That's River Rock Manor. There's roughly another 126,000 square feet of retail and restaurants. And 3 acres of a public park, and even a greenway connection to the 50-mile network of greenway. So question there is, when something this large moves through Cornelius approval process, what are some of the hardest conditions to attach to it? How does something like this, how does a project like this move through the process, I guess is the bigger question. I know you weren't here when it went through, but just walk us through that.
Yeah, I think these development projects often start way earlier than I think many in the general public realize. A lot of times people think that development starts when the project pops out of the ground, when they see the first construction sign or the first grading project out there. It starts years prior to that. Alexander Farms, just for example, that's a large project that has a lot more history to it than average.
Right.
That was entitled in 2017. Almost 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
And something that large from a developer standpoint takes a lot of planning, a lot of capital, a lot of coordination with various parties, property owners, just to get that initial approval before they can even get into construction. So typically what happens, a developer will approach us with a request in Cornelius. We take it to a small group of internal decision makers that kind of first evaluates it, gives an early thumbs up or down as far as, we think this might work, or, maybe not. And then the entitlement process, what we call it, or the rezoning process, takes anywhere from 4 to 9 months, where they run it through. We have to take the project numerous times for public feedback. So that's a big thing that, we want to make sure that the neighborhoods and the nearby property owners get to weigh in on that, and just to make sure that they're comfortable with the project. Ultimately, it has to go to our planning board for a recommendation vote. That's a group of citizens that make decisions on all these. And then finally, our town board gives a yes or a no. So again, to advertise all those steps and to coordinate on the design of the project, make sure that all the voices that we hear from go into that. That, again, can take many months. And then from there, years to build. So Alexander Farms, for example, there was a lot of discussion around traffic mitigation. So we want to make sure that the traffic that they're generating doesn't negatively impact the roads, that they build the turn lanes and the various infrastructure that they need. There's a lot of conversation about street connectivity, both within the development and to adjoining neighborhoods, as well as what's the mix going to be of commercial versus residential. I know that was a big conversation as well. But again, many of these large projects you mentioned, these were entitled by previous town boards. Right. So the decision makers that sit here today were not the ones who decided on Alexander Farms. They have a very long lifespan. Right,
which is, that itself is a topic that, we try to promote on the show, that, the people that are sitting behind the dais, the things you're seeing and feeling, and impacting today most likely was not the people that are sitting up there.
That's right.
It was the folks that sat there before them.
That's right.
And just because it takes so long, I know Bill Thunberg with the LNTC or LNRTC was in here, and we were talking about Highway 150 in Mooresville.
Yes.
And we've used this on the show several times. Is the first time that discussion happened about widening 150 was 1987. So that's how long it takes to build a road. So it's easy to be upset with the people sitting at the dais, but it's not necessarily they didn't create the problem. So
absolutely.
So it's helping the public understand that. And how long does it take a road? I mean, like we said, 150 was back in 1987. I mean, I know we've been having discussions on Highway 73 for decades.
Absolutely.
Right. And I still don't know when it's supposedly going to start, I think, at the end of this year or some point. I know it doesn't overlap with 150 now. And before, at one point, they were actually going to be at the same time, which would have been a disaster. And I know it's in Huntersville and not Cornelius, but
that would have been a fun one.
It would have been a disaster. Right?
That's right. That's right.
So that's just a side note. So going on. So Alexander Farms out here on the Catawba side. Now moving back downtown. So Mills Market. So Mills Market's roughly $80 million investment, 239 multifamily units, 11,500 square feet of commercial fronting along Catawba, 2.5 acres in the Arts District right next to the Kane Arts Center. So a 5-story building with rooftop terrace, pool, sauna, structured parking deck. And as a part of the development, the town secured an additional 138 public parking spaces inside the deck. So that'll be great for the folks utilizing that area of town. That was a very, very good move. So for listeners who've not walked downtown Cornelius lately, Mills Market will be one of the most consequential changes the corridor has seen since the Kane Center opened. So let's take us to the trade-offs on a project like that. So the developer, from my understanding, agreed to scale down from 6 stories to 5, from 263 units down to 239. However, add about 4,000 square feet of commercial. So to help people understand, because this is beyond the blueprint, so to help people understand, how does the negotiation work between the town and the developer? How does that, we want this, you want that, give and take. So walk us through that.
Yeah, and every project is different, but typically the planning department, we are the liaisons between the developer and many of the decision makers. Right. And so early on in a project, or oftentimes before we even hear of certain projects, we are in close coordination with our town board and our planning board on a regular basis, make sure that we understand what the policy priorities are for the community.
Right.
So things like, for example, transportation infrastructure, affordable housing, commercial development, so that when developers approach us with a project, it's easy for us to be liaisons to convey those policy priorities to them early in the process before they invest a lot of time in the entitlements. And so now Mills Market, for example, worked its way through the process. They heard from the general public. They heard from interested parties such as neighbors. They, again, heard from planning board and then town board around, well, here are our town priorities. Right. So for downtown, that was a very special, and it continues to be a special site. So what we knew going into the project was, well, we need additional public parking to revitalize our downtown area and serve the newly constructed Kane Center for the Arts. Affordable housing remained a priority, as well as making sure that the architectural character of our downtown was protected by adding all these units, that the building really, the architecture of it aligned closely with the heights, the rhythm, scale, and form of the historic neighborhood. And so all of those were considerations that were conveyed to the developer through the process. The developer would prepare early elevations, renderings of the building that was reviewed by all parties and by our architectural review board. That's a group of local professional architects that looks at that stuff. And so we have all those voices baked into the process so that we are able to convey to the developer from all perspectives what the highest and best project will be. At the end of the day, the town board's decision, they weigh the benefit to the community versus the negative impact to the community. And at the end of the day, Mills Market provided so many, and again, previous board that made this decision, but for that group, they provided so many benefits to the downtown that it was worth adding the extra residential units.
Right. All right. So from that, we'll move a little further to the south and east. So the industrial jobs. So we'll talk about Cornelius Business Park on Bailey Road. So there was roughly $39 million in investment, 36 acres, about 4 buildings, 188,000 square feet, and 150 jobs. The planning board voted 7-1 to recommend approval in May of 25. And then on June 2nd of 25, the town board denied it 5-0, finding it inconsistent with the town's land use. So the question is how to walk our listeners through how that happens, right? So just from a developer standpoint, just helping the people understand that not everything's a slam dunk, right?
Absolutely. It comes down to community benefit. So that's a big thing. We got to weigh what the neighbors are saying and what makes sense for the longevity of our community.
Okay. And now a little more controversial one that just happened is, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back on Beyond the
Sounds
Blueprint.
good.
Thank you.
Yep.
And we're back on Beyond the Blueprint. Brad Howard, joined today by David Cole. We're talking about the town of Cornelius. Right now we're focused on the projects in process. One currently on the board. We're talking about how things happen. So the new Cornelius Inn, right, Mays Road, is $20 million, 45,000 square feet, 2-story, 40-room hotel, 7 cottage homes, a spa. Sounds like an amazing development. And the town board heard the developer's presentation on May 4th. There were roughly 600 people who had signed a petition opposing the project. The next meeting's in June, and then the final zoning will be later this summer. But not to prejudice your team's coming reaction, just to help the listeners get context. So walk everybody through how a project gets evaluated on its technical merits, land use compatibility, traffic, UDO, and because a lot of times people are emotional and there's an emotional heat in the room, right? So outside of the emotional heat, how does a project like that get evaluated?
Absolutely. There's a lot of things that go into that evaluation. So first and foremost in planning, when we're formulating our recommendation for a project, we look at land use plan. So we have it's an adopted policy guide for the community that basically parcel by parcel says this is the type of land use and the type of development character we want here. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of our base for evaluating whether a project fits or not. At the end of the day, what goes into the land use plan is what benefits the community the most in that area. Right. So in the example here, it's an interesting project because it kind of sits right at the intersection of 3 communities. So it's in our jurisdiction, but it's across the street from Davidson in Huntersville. Right. And it's kind of out along Samford Road, along a corridor that is seeing a lot of growth and development, mostly from the Huntersville side. Right. And it's very much what I would consider an emerging corridor. Mm-hmm. So there's some projects that would come in that would be a very easy yes or no based on what the land use plan says. Right. So, for example, we wouldn't allow you to plop a gas station in the middle of a residential neighborhood. It is not a good fit, a lot of negative impact to it. Many of these projects come in, if it's a large-scale project, we'd require traffic mitigations, like you mentioned. We look at building architecture. Does it fit with the surroundings from height and, again, the materials used? Mm-hmm. And then in Cornelius, because again, we are running out of land, right. It's every project needs to be very high quality and demonstrate some degree of benefit and longevity to the community. And this project, again, we've not made any sort of recommendation on it. It's still very much under evaluation on all those fronts. Right. But considering its presence on the emerging Samford Road corridor, there's just a lot of considerations out there. It's not a clear area. It's not a clear guide. What we do know is there's a lot of calls from the neighborhoods about the rural preservation character of Mays Road, and there's that weighing. Well, a hotel benefits the community by bringing in more tax revenue and visitors that benefit other businesses. Right. But on the flip side, it can detract from the rural character of the corridor if you're not careful about design. Mm-hmm. And so those are the elements that are being weighed in this project.
Yeah, you're right. That is an interesting corridor. And then with the train possibility coming and everything else.
Absolutely. That will change everything as well.
That can change the conversation. So here, now jumping into this segment here on roads, roundabouts, and infrastructure. So let's talk about the $122 million number. That was the combined value of the 8 road projects that the town currently has either underway or breaking ground within the next year. And for a small town with a population that really fits into a baseball stadium, this is This is an extraordinary amount of pavement being moved at the same time. So just to walk through it with you, and if I have any of these facts wrong, just let me know. So Jeton Road Extension is roughly a $2.9 million town-funded paving project that should be complete by the end of June. NC 115 Potts Road Roundabout, $16.5 million. Right at the Davidson Cornelius line, it's about $4.5 million, $5 million. The Torrance Chapel roundabouts, there's 3 of them at Torrance, West Catawba, Liverpool. That's roughly just under $17 million. That'll be completed in the fall of 27. Hickory Street Signal was about $3.5 million in late 25. Was completed. The North Cross Drive Extension, $21 million, and it opens in late 27. Bailey Road Extension is a little over $20 million. So straightens out Bailey Road and connects it into US 21. That will be a huge infrastructure improvement there for the town. West Catawba widening, which is the really big one, almost $34 million. Right away utility delays. New bid date is November of 26. So that work should be complete if everything stays on schedule in 2029.
I will say, that's a pretty complete list of our transportation projects. I will say Jeton Extension was a town project. We've actually completed that one. That was, we did some bike ped infrastructure along there, which from what I've heard has been pretty well received by the community.
Right.
All the other ones you've listed, I will say West Catawba, as I'm sure we've all experienced, has been delayed a little bit. So that's fall of 27 expected bid, and then 2030 probably completion for West Catawba. And so I think it's important for the community to realize kind of what we touched on earlier. It takes years and years and years to get a transportation project worked through the process, especially all of these other ones that you listed. These are NCDOT roads, NCDOT facilities that the town is contributing towards through our transportation bonds to help fund, but ultimately the state's picking up the state and or the federal government through the local MPO, they're picking up a huge part of that tab for those projects. And, it is very significant for a community of our size to have that many projects.
It's a lot of orange barrels.
A lot of orange barrels within the next 2 to 4 years coming online. I mean, that's almost unheard of. Usually communities even larger than us have maybe 2 DOT projects, and we have 6 ongoing right now. So
6 major ones.
We're very excited about it. They will really improve our corridors, and we certainly need that congestion relief here. So we're excited that DOT's coming in and that we're able to partner with them on them.
Yeah. So, and one, I think that will have a major impact. I know Catawba widening will have an impact, but the new road that runs from Westmoreland down to 25.
Yes, that's the North Cross extension. Yes, sir.
But I think that from a logistical traffic mover for folks that live on the west side, that helps get them placed out to the interstate at 25.
Absolutely. That'll connect right down through. You'd be able to get to Birkdale from Cornelius without getting on Catawba.
Which would be huge.
That's a huge improvement for folks. And it's interesting. The 2 road extensions, Bailey Road and North Cross, we often hear from citizens that they don't know that they're happening because you can't see them from the existing road network.
Right.
They're just kind of under construction in the woods right now.
Right.
But when they come online, those will be very significant new connections that'll benefit the community.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize the progress that had been made on that improvement until a few months ago.
Absolutely.
So it's hidden and you don't know it's there.
That's right.
And then and then when the flyover comes across, all the other projects that are in the works down there, the interchange at Westmoreland, and then the what do you guys call the flyover in Huntersville that goes from by the hospital?
I know the one you're talking about. So with Bailey Road flyover,
Bailey Road
that's
flyover.
our proposed. That's not funded right now, but
Right.
we really that project, and I will say the new exit 27 at Westmoreland Road,
Right.
not funded, but that is a huge priority for the town, and that would really unlock the transportation network in that area.
Right.
So we did put in for a build grant with the federal government for that one to at least design some plans for it to help move it along so that eventually we can get funding.
Yeah, and a lot of people, you might want to explain how it works sometimes, because if the federal government says there's money ready to go, if you don't have the plan sitting on the shelf ready to go to submit, then you miss that window if there's any special programs or anything that comes up.
It does happen that way.
Yeah.
Often it helps when you have plans. It helps
Right.
you get funding because you
Right.
can demonstrate that you're serious about it as a community and show that it doesn't cost as much as maybe some of the early estimates would show as well. So it's very important to move it along incrementally if you want any chance of funding.
All right. Next question here is more of just to help understand the context of how we negotiate. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about a developer to planner question. Is okay. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with David Cole with the town of Cornelius. All right. Beyond the Blueprint, I'm Brad Howard, joined by David Cole with the town of Cornelius, talking about planning and how things happen. So, from the planning department standpoint, and for every developer out there that I know would like to hear the answer to this question. So, so here it is. So when a project planner sits down across the table from the town, and the conversation typically goes when we sit down with the town, it's more of like, this is what I want to build. Here's my schedule, and here's what we need, right? And then on the flip side, the town comes back and says, well, this is what our ordinance allows. This is what the comprehensive plan says, and here's what we need from you. Mm-hmm. So from your seat, what are the biggest mistakes developers make in their first meeting with the planning department? So how do we unwind this and make it a better experience for everybody?
Absolutely. And I'm speaking from a planner's perspective. There's three things that come to mind that I've seen in the past, and I've worked with some really fantastic developers who understand all of these. So by no means is this the experience every time.
Right.
But whenever they come to the table, the first thing I would encourage the development community is to really listen to the first thing out of the planner's mouth as it pertains to kind of early concerns about the project. Mm-hmm. So I've had experiences where a developer comes in and wants to do a very specific project, right, and refuses to budge on a certain element, be it unit count or design or a landscape buffer. I mean, it could be anything to the project.
Right.
And if the planner says early on, hey, I have concerns about this because you have a neighborhood behind you that won't be supportive if you do this, or hey, we think the town board really cares about the certain element that you're trying to do,
right? And
they're going to want that changed.
Which is important to know, because if the folks on the dais are voting,
exactly,
you need to make sure that their wishes are in that document.
Exactly.
And then the folks like yourself that are standing up there saying, we recommend, or we do not recommend, you want to make sure that your wishes are reflected in that document.
Exactly.
Right.
So we offer a recommendation. Town board decides often, and Cornelius is how we do it. So my first piece of advice would be really listen to those early concerns. And also, one thing I would encourage from the development community is to just understand that it's a process.
Right.
So oftentimes we give an estimated timeline. We say, okay, maybe 6 months to an entitlement.
Is that where you are right now?
Just as an example.
Okay.
Actually, I will say that's for some projects, that's about where we are.
Is that's about 6 months for zoning in Cornelius?
It is about
Wow.
6 months. Now we have some larger projects that are taking longer, but for an average smaller scale project.
Some towns are quoting 18 months around here.
That's not where we are.
Okay.
I will say, though, with the asterisk that we're very cautious about the projects that we accept.
Right. Right.
So one thing that I would just encourage to any developer is just understand that it's a process.
Right.
So oftentimes we're the first contact, and we might have a laundry list of concerns, but we're not the only laundry list of concerns.
Right.
So that through the process, they will hear from planning board members, from citizens, from neighbors, from other interested parties, and to just make sure that you engage the neighborhoods and take all of that feedback into account and modify the application as you go.
Right.
And understand that what you start with won't necessarily be what gets to the town board for a final decision.
Right.
And the more projects I've seen that consider every step of the process and modify the proposal and take as many of those voices into account, on average, are the more successful projects than the ones that come in and say, this is what I want to do.
Right.
I'm going to railroad this through
Right.
regardless of what everybody says. And the town board loves me, right? Which,
you don't want to be a bull in a china shop.
Right. Yeah. Don't be a bull in a china shop.
do not
Right.
do
So
that.
understand that the timeline will flex, that there are many voices that go in, and the more that you can demonstrate, you can meet those needs, the more successful it will be. Yes.
All right. So now we talked at the break, and I want to dive a little bit more into this is more of a regional discussion. So, so the projects that happen. So Cornelius doesn't plan in a vacuum, and most most people, I guess, most municipalities get caught up in they're looking at just internally as what's happening in their bubble, right, in their world. So, but when you step back, and I know at the break we were talking about like Sherrills Ford and Mooresville, because Sherrills Catawba County was approving everything out there, but yet they had no services on Lincoln, on that side of Lincoln. They had to drive down to Huntersville or Mooresville. So all that traffic, what was it, roughly like 19,000 cars a day,
somewhere in there,
were coming across the 150 bridge. So they're blaming Mooresville they're blaming the commissioners and everybody in Mooresville and Iredell County for that, but it was actually 20,000 of those cars on the road every day in each direction were coming from the other side of the lake.
That's right.
So back to a more regional view on this. So Cornelius doesn't plan in a vacuum. The town sits between Mooresville and Davidson to the north, Huntersville to the south. So these towns, two different counties, but one interstate is the spine,
Yes.
right? And there's really they're all north-south. And the east-west connectivity across the lake is very challenging. So let's start up with Davidson, right? So Davidson has Summit Farms, which is 58-acre mixed use on Shears Road, 109 residential units, 40-room hotel, Summit Coffee's headquarters and roasteries, and unanimous commissioner approval. They have the Haley property, which is 99 units across from 47 acres on Ralph Knox Road, and Pulte's doing that. Pot Sloan Connector, Main Potts Davidson Roundabout, which we talked about a little bit earlier. The 73 widening section in Davidson starts summer of 26. So where do Cornelius and Davidson have to coordinate? And we discussed this a little bit earlier, where everybody's boundaries start coming together. So
right.
Where do they coordinate the most carefully shared? Where do they coordinate most carefully? Shared connectors, watershed boundaries, the spine, school capacity. What is the dialogue around the connection with these towns?
Yeah, and that's a good question. We do certainly not live in a vacuum, especially in North Mac. Cornelius, Davidson, Huntersville are very interconnected communities. I remember we had a conversation. I was at a meeting involving cats, and they were talking about their microtransit.
Okay.
And just as an example.
And the microtransit's the little buses that come around.
Yes,
okay.
So kind of on demand, like an Uber.
Right.
And so they had to design their connectivity, their zones across all three towns like it was one zone, because that's how connected the communities are, right? So somebody who lives in Huntersville is very likely to go into Cornelius Davidson as part of their daily routine, right? Compare that to, say, if you go up into Iredell County, if you live in like Statesville, your daily routine is pretty much contained to the town boundaries, more or less. And so we have to think about a lot of things in terms of daily coordination. So we have, like you mentioned, a lot of transportation projects. So the Pot Sloan Beatty project actually does cover both communities, and it benefits both communities. And we also have to be very cautious when we're looking at development entitlements up against our neighbors. So, for example, Cornelius Inn, the one that you mentioned, sits on the boundaries of both Davidson and Huntersville. So, when we're looking at site design elements, we want to make sure we understand what's Davidson doing? Are they putting in sidewalks next door, or did Huntersville just approve a development next door? So we have close coordination with all those planning directors and planning staff to make sure they're understanding that there's a good understanding between all the communities. the nice thing about Mecklenburg County is everything is very much baked into the same system. So we're in the same plan review system. CMS covers all the communities. Charlotte Water serves utilities to all 3 communities. So there's a lot of different agencies and a lot of different different organizations that really cross those boundaries, cross those borders when they need to. So that makes coordination a lot easier than in other areas.
Okay. And on this, so we talked about the spine. So when a planner looks at the spine, you have 25, 28, 31, 33, 36.
Yep.
So multiple towns, 2 different counties. So the regional planning conversation, either through the CRTPO or informally, or between all the different planning departments, thinking about, even though it's multiple systems, multiple, I guess, all over, there's different agencies with the state DOT, with the state, the DOT, the county. I mean, there's so many moving parts there. Do you guys sit down and talk through this regularly, or how does that conversation happen?
Well, it depends on the topic, but
Okay.
we do regularly. So the planning directors do regularly connect
good.
in the region.
Okay, good.
There's a lot of dialogue, and they all know each other, and in the government world, I think we're all very close together. If we have a question or we need to discuss a certain topic, also if we're doing a long range plan, we try to pull in representatives from the neighboring communities to allow them to weigh in. So, for example, I know Davidson, when they did their comp plan, they pulled in Cornelius and vice versa, just to make sure that that we understand we live in a region, that the needs, the demands, they don't stop at our borders.
All right. So before we leave, before we take us out, a couple personal questions and close up. So 3 quick ones if we can get to them. So favorite local spot around the lake?
Oh, that's a great question. And that varies based on time of year, but I've taken the family to Jeton Park a lot in Cornelius. So that is I know that's a local favorite. We have young children, so it has everything. It has the little beach area. It's got the walking trails and the playground, and it's just a great way to enjoy the lake for those who don't own a boat like myself. So,
understood. One thing you would like the citizens of Cornelius to hear from you, from the planning department, while we're on the radio today?
I think one thing that I'd like to convey is simply that we are listening, that we want to make sure that they feel they have a voice and can speak up and let us know their thoughts, be it about a project or a concern.
All right. Well, thank you so much, David Cole, Assistant Planning Director with the town of Cornelius. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for all the work you do, and thank you for the visit today.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, Brad.
All right. Thank you so much. This is Beyond the Blueprint on WSIC. I'm Brad Howard, and from the heart of Lake Norman, until next week, we will see you then.